reaches of the countryside, as the world swings into its fourth year of war, goes the call for manpower. Manpower needed to forge the striking force of the United Nations. And today, from the homes of fighting democracy, a new response emerges. Women today are mobilizing alongside men in the structure of total war. Already, the Canadian Women's Army Corps has taken over 21 types of Army duty, every member releasing a soldier for active service. And as they unravel the mysteries of military map reading, they know that democracies the world over have at long last recognized their abilities as part of the manpower of war. Back in 1939, England, faced suddenly with a mass evacuation problem, discovered the strength of women's service. Calling on Lady Reading, greatest women's organizer of the war, the British government launched the WVS, the Women's Voluntary Service. From areas near objectives, thousands of children were transported to safety in the country and settled in strange new surroundings. The women of England volunteered to become foster mothers and save young lives from shock and horror. Next came the giant task of reorganizing civilian population for the stringency of war. The WVS started salvage campaigns and directed the energy of all free hands to making clothing for bombed victims. In seacoast towns, they took their work into the open air to sew strong-smelling oilskins for the sailors. They were ready wherever they were needed. To areas devastated by Blitz, they sped in mobile units, bringing hot drinks and food and clothing. In country emergency hospitals, they released fully trained nurses for heavier duty. Today, the WVS is a civilian army of 1 million unpaid members. Following in the wake of the voluntary services have come the specialized women's auxiliaries, which release personnel of the armed forces for active duty. Replacing farmhands who have gone out to fight are 23,000 women of the Land Army, women who know that the outcome of the war may well depend on which nation can feed its people longest. Freeing men to fight on battlefronts far from home are the women of the Territorial Service. Maneuvering detectors and manning anti-aircraft guns, they are fighting back and bringing down enemy planes. With every air crew the RAF can muster, adding its weight to the bombing offensive on Germany, English girls are enlisting for ferry service in ever-increasing numbers. Girls like Mary Johnson, who wears the coveted gold wings and can fly anything from a trainer to a Wellington twin-engine bomber. They must have courage as well as skill, for they know that the course of operational duty may bring them face to face with Hitler's Luftwaffe. In 1940, the women of England began to train for the most vital of all war jobs, industry. To the mechanical work of the factory, they turned capable domestic hands. They learned engineering and adapted to production machines, a deftness acquired at home. It was a new world for most of them, one that acknowledged their ability to master technique and craftsmanship, and even granted them union recognition. Today, nearly 4 million women have been placed in jobs so vital to the war effort that they cannot change them without permission. England looks to her women for manpower, flying her planes, manning her guns, building new productive strength, hot straightening and cold sawing, puddling, the scammering, and the loading of heavy slag. war swings forward to the offensive, the women of England, who are 60% of her population, are fast becoming 60% of her strength. Over 20 years ago, Soviet Russia began the reorientation of women that only today is being brought about in other countries. Laying the foundations of a cooperative state, Russia realized the potential strength of her 100 million women citizens. Today, to the Supreme Soviet Council in Moscow, come 227 women deputies from the far-flung Soviet republics, from Georgia and the Ukraine, from Siberia and the vast Arctic region of Yakutia. For, says the Constitution of the Soviets, women shall be accorded equal rights with men in all fields of economic, social, and political life. And so the energy of women was integrated in the building of the new Russia, from the members of the State Planning Commission in Moscow to the fields of Uzbek, where Gulnabat, whose memory goes back to the oppression of Gale and Kurta, today is detachment leader of a collectivized cotton farm. Today, women have almost entirely taken over the running of collective farms. Outdoor classes in agricultural technique train thousands of girls like Nadia Sitnikova, who learns the mechanics of the complicated machine she must manage. She will be able to repair it alone and keep it running as well as any man. In the defense factories of industrial Russia, in Stalinsk, Gorky, and Magnitogorsk, women have taken over 75% of the work. Women who, in the comradeship of the workers, have stood beside men, learning their jobs, ready at a moment's notice to carry on alone. Given equally with men the right to work, the women of Russia have taken on equally with men the responsibilities of work. They help to build the new industrial map of Russia, spread eastward, not by random expansion, but planned for a future menaced by their aggressive neighbors to the west. Women like Kema Rajimova, petroleum engineer in Baku, locomotive driver Klavdia Kuzina, and railway director Zinaida Troitskaya, who stayed at her post during Moscow's first attack and wears the Order of Lenin for bravery. And so when war thrust itself on Soviet earth, the women of Russia were ready. They were not afraid to shoulder pick and shovel and march out beside the men. They put up a formidable wall of resistance against the enemy. Wherever the invading forces spread their smoking pillars of destruction, Soviet women formed frontline firefighting squads to release every man who can shoulder arms for actual combat. To advance posts go volunteer nurses, girls who carry their first aid to sieges like that of Sebastopol. And with the German drive at its height, the Army girls go out with the regular Army as technicians, clerical workers, and doctors to carry arms and serve under fire in the front line. As parachute nurses, flown in special hospital planes, they cross enemy fire to reach the wounded who have been fighting in pockets of resistance, still holding out behind the lines. Women of Russia have not failed the nation they helped to build, a nation that believes in their ability and relies on their strength. Half a world away, the Dominion of Canada, today taking stock of her woman power, profits by the experience of England and Russia. Already serving overseas, the navy blue uniform of Canadian nursing sisters is a familiar sight at the debarkation ports of England. Back on the front line of Canadian production, thousands of women have joined their strength to Canada's war machine. In the rapidly growing Canadian aircraft industry, more women are employed than the pre-war total of men and women combined. From Canadian assembly shops, there now roll out as many planes a week as were turned out in a year 3 years ago. Modern warfare requires 17 factory workers for every man on the battlefield. And in ever-increasing numbers, Canadian women, fitted by training for the job, are becoming the men behind the guns. Across Canada, training centers are organized under the War Emergency Training Program, where many thousands of students have become skilled production workers. The schools enroll 15,000 at a time. Trainees may be paid, and girls over 23 may train for aircraft work. In the bench work class, they learn to handle pliers and manipulate electrical wiring, a job to which the quick hands of girls like Marguerite Dupuis will adapt themselves easily. Joan Hunter, 26-year-old domestic worker, learns to construct jigs and aircraft ribs. Sheet metal riveting makes craftsmen of girls who once envied their brothers' toolboxes. Women learn to turn the domestic needle and thread into tools of war. In huge production plants, graduate students set to work, and they soon feel at home among the strange shapes of half-completed planes under the supervision of women like Helen Dixon, former YWCA counselor. In the front line of production, women dress for the job, ready to climb or to crawl in the slacks that have become their uniform. The girls are given protective cream for their hands before spreading a covering of strong fabric dope over the wings of an ensign, wings that take shape in the course of a single morning's work. Lois Allwood, whose husband is somewhere in England, sees that the taping is firm, and Claire Peters puts on a coat of paint. Even a war production team needs time out for relaxation, and aircraft workers get 2 10-minute rest periods a day, and most girls take advantage of the soft drinks cart. Meanwhile, in the machine shop, 1,000 pairs of hands are building war power. War power from college graduate Betty Pearson, working with one-time sales girl Jean White. War power from the hands of Margaret Crawley, rotating a turret lathe. 2 years ago, Margaret was just a girl wondering what to do. Today, she's an accomplished mechanic. And Jessie Adams, who thought of being an interior decorator, now takes artist's pride in the smooth deburring of metal parts. Over in another corner, a dozen girls in dark glasses are manipulating oxyacetylene flame to weld exhaust collector rings. Down the long benches of the sub-assembly room, they carry on the battle of production with pliers, gauges, and calipers, where hundreds of small parts are mounted on jigs by operations better suited to the deft hands of women than to the bigger hands of men. And as the women work, they realize that their newfound pride and pleasure in craftsmanship is achieving more than just a good job done in a 10-hour day. They understand the meaning of their united effort as they watch the miracle of a modern plane take shape. And so it moves out from the factories. War power, forged by the skill of the workers. women of Canada are fighting. From coast to coast, they know that every responsible citizen stands in a key position. For throughout the Dominion's 3.5 million square miles are only 4.5 million employable people. Today, Canada seeks a solution to the vital question of manpower. From the hands of a determined people comes the answer. Across the skies of the world, they write their message. A message of strength from the women who fight in the factories. From women who are manpower for the United Nations.